Welcome back to another Epidose of these crazy people that are eating meat all the time. We can't stop talking about it. I'm Tom. We got Justin. We got JC or LadyCarnivory with us today. And we got a very special guest who came in to field a few questions for us. We got the one and only Jon Andersen, well known as a bodybuilder. And you know what, John? I keep forgetting you were a wrestler. I've known you in like the strength and bodybuilding for so long that I completely forget. And I was looking at your bio and I was like, oh, that's right, he was a wrestler for a long time. So
yeah, it was that in that phase of strongman. My career was good, and keep in mind I made a little bit of money. Those days where it was the .com boom, so there was a lot of sponsors giving out money, but not the money I was after. So I had to go to a bigger platform, which was wrestling.
Gotcha. So
I do have to touch on that just for a minute. So how do you go from to wrestle in Japan? Like, were you like a Cactus Jack, like Mick Foley? I know that's how he kind of got his big start was over there.
Honestly, brother, I was a shitty wrestler. I was never even really a wrestling fan. I loved when I was young. I liked watching it, not because I cared what they were doing. I just liked the big guys. I was aspiring young man trying to be a big guy. So when I came from strongman, I was legitimate. Obviously, I was already a high level international athlete, and I looked a certain way. And that's what they really bought me for. I had a few moves. I'd knock people down. I'd flex my muscles and scream like a crazy man. And the Japanese people loved it. It's that simple.
That's awesome.
Sorry, I'm not familiar, but what was your wrestling name?
Strongman.
Creative. I like it.
Yeah. Well, their culture is very different. Here's another really funny, interesting fact about my career over there. So my seventh ever wrestling match was in Japan. I mean, I learned how to do it, wrestled a few of the high school gymnasiums, where you see, these guys are wrestling in front of 45 people. There's nobody there. It's a huge, anyway, my seventh ever match, I'm in Japan at a pay-per-view, and I get ready to go out, and the music, they select your music for you. I'm standing there getting ready to go, and all of a sudden I hear Macho Man, YMCA Macho Man start to play. And the little guy with the flashlight points at me and points at the curtain like, time for you to go out. I was like, fuck, I thought this was some sort of an intermission. So my entry music for about the first 6 months over there was Macho Man.
Nice.
It was crazy.
Awesome.
They would see me on the street and they'd say, Macho, 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 Macho.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I got my first question for you, and let me set it up a little bit. So in the kind of fitness, low carb, carnivore world, people are constantly talking about fasting, whether it's long fast, 72s, 48s, intermittent fasting, so it's called, like eating one meal a day. And I know you're going to explain this better than I ever did. So give us a rundown on how somebody can get leaner eating frequently. So, let's say 6 or 7 times a day.
Yeah. Well, okay. So just to touch on the fast, the idea that people are using a fast as a weight loss remedy is kind of silly, because if you look into what fasts were, originally used for, it's got nothing to do with that. So going back to the other side of the question, which is where we want to spend our time, which is the real helpful information. Think about, people say when I coach them, they're like, I've eaten this much in my whole life. So listen, you just give me a week and you're going to see the difference. You're going to feel the difference. So feeding your metabolism. I would think of your metabolism, or a person's metabolism, as like a little campfire. Most people that are carrying body fat, their metabolism is like a little campfire because it's burning very slowly. So if you start feeding a person with the right foods more frequently, think of your digestion as almost like a conveyor belt that carries wood to that fire. Well, if you're putting the proper amount of wood and the right type of wood on that conveyor belt, it's like putting lots of pieces of kindling on a small fire, which we know it builds very quickly. So as the fire starts to build, you take those little pieces of wood, you can obviously make them slightly bigger, but increasing the frequency is even a safer way. So in essence, what you're doing is think about, you're trying to take that campfire of an overweight person into a bonfire of someone who's jacked and has very little body fat. Once your metabolism is that bonfire, you're burning body fat, you're tons of energy, you're recovering from workouts. It's a whole different creature. And then when you get that bonfire really jamming, you know, the little campfire, shit, you know, I take a piss on that thing or dump a beer on it, it'll go out. Well, that bonfire, fuck, man, you got to really try to put that thing out. You could be dumping beers on it, piss on it. Hell, the only thing that's going to make it out is a lot of effort to get it to go out. So that's really what you want, is you want your metabolism to be like that fire that's so big it almost goes out of control. And that's where you find people that they're active, they're happy, they're healthy, they're optimistic, they don't carry body fat, and they can build muscle much, much faster than ever before. So your metabolism, so then you hear people say, oh, your metabolism is too fast, you can't sleep. That's bullshit. Your metabolism moving fast is like a very high performance vehicle. It'll start fast, stop fast, turn fast. Everything will do on a quick command. As to where a slow metabolism, you're not sleeping worth a damn. You can't wake up. You can't. It's just like you're this very, very. It's like a monotone but it's a tone that you don't want. As to where metabolism moving fast, it's everything you do want. So to answer the question, eating the right foods frequently will feed your metabolism. As we know, burning body fat, there's a multitudes of ways that people want to stimulate metabolism. Well, most people run to cardio. That's silly. Cardio on a scale of 1 to 10 is about a 2. Weight training, resistance training is probably more like a 5. As to where diet done properly is like a 7. So why in the hell would you waste your time with the least effective tool? Only because people don't know any better. So if you know what you're doing, like cardio is something that bores the hell out of me, and I don't need to do it. So why would I do it?
Right.
It's that simple, you know?
Right.
So hopefully that was explained in a way that everybody can understand.
Yeah, because people are constantly talking about fasting, especially I'm in a lot of conversations where they're talking about it, and I get it. Fasting is a powerful lever that you can pull sometimes, but it seems to me a lot of people get so comfortable under eating, and then they run into problems, and then it's like, well, you're not eating enough, man. You're not getting enough protein. You don't have enough fat or whatever your fuel is. I know you're not we kind of are in the carnivore community all the time, which is all meat based, and I mean, for some people the fuel is carbohydrates or a balance of fats and carbohydrates. But for us, it's primarily protein and fat. What are the ideal ratios? And that's always a tough thing, because one, if you're under eating, how do you what does it matter what the ratio is if you're not eating enough of either one, right?
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're under eating, I mean, like when I coach people and they get in a place where they don't have food, like I have one guy that I'm coaching, he's in the Navy, or excuse me, God damn it, what's Coast Guard? Jesus Christ, sorry about that, little brain fart there. And he said they were out in the last couple of days, they were out on the ship, they started running out of food. And obviously I told him, in this case, you're better off to eat birthday cake than nothing, because you're having some fuel, no matter how terrible and how empty it is better than nothing. And so you're totally correct. If you're eating too little, it matters much less what you're eating. Now, if you're eating a lot, that's where, like, when I coach people, they freak out. Like, some people are counters. I don't count shit. I look at performance. Performance will tell me exactly what to do. And like, this is like 1,700 more calories than I'm eating last time, and I was gaining weight. I said, listen, you just give me a week, and you're going to see. And literally in a couple of days, because they're feeding themselves properly and they're not at a deficit, their energy shoots through the roof. They get flatter in the stomach, even though they're eating a ton more, because that conveyor belt starts running really fast. You're putting food in you, that your body can process easily. And as soon as that campfire starts to grow, and you're going to only really, once a person is seen how eating properly frequently works, then they're a believer. But until they've actually experienced it, most people have a hard time truly trusting that process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so many things that we've learned lately is kind of counter to what we were raised to believe. Right. So it's,
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to undo that wiring. Right.
Yeah. I mean, one of the worst lessons, my mom, it loves me to death. I'm still a huge mama's boy, but one of the things that you can't leave the table until you finish everything on your plate. It should have been a different variant to that rule. The next time you eat, it will be what's on that plate. That would have been fine, but to train yourself because it's a rule to overeat, fuck man, that was where a ton of my problems came from. That stretch in my stomach was something that felt comforting to me, as to where finally I'm going to be 50 next month. And it's probably during the 49th year of my life that I'm actually starting to realize that feeling of being too full is something that feels it's not a good feeling, as to where before that stretch would hit and I would feel that discomfort, but I would push right through it. Almost like when you take a shot of some sort of liquor and it tastes terrible, but shortly after you start to feel good, well, then you keep doing it. You can deal with it. It's like that. The worse the stretch, the more comforting it felt to me. So it was a really negative vortex that took me almost 50 years to get past.
Yeah. So you're going to be 50 soon. So I'm a little older. I just turned 51. So
right on, brother.
Now Justin's a little younger. What are you, 30?
32.
32.
Ouch, 32. Yeah.
And JC's only 27.
28.
20.
Yeah. It's crazy when I hear people say their age and they're younger. I always think, what was I doing at that point? So when I was you guys at the bottom, when I say the bottom, I'm looking at the grid of my screen. I was somewhere in Eastern Europe competing at that point, and now it's like a whole different world right now,
Yeah, you've had quite the adventure. So let me ask JC, do you have a question you want to ask Jon before I talk too much?
Yes, I would love to know, how would you say someone should get into bodybuilding? Like, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you change?
So you're saying, like, if I was giving myself advice to do better at what I did, or if I was giving myself a piece of advice to try to get interested and get started?
So you, as your younger self interested in bodybuilding, what advice would you give to yourself?
I love that question. Well, number one, I would have started to push myself to understand nutrient value in food, because this was just eat as much as I can, lift as heavy as I can, because that was really kind of the formula back then. It was, we were talking about, when I really, really started to get into training and my life had been kind of committed to what I was doing. I was in my late teens, early 20s. At that point, something had flipped in me, and I didn't really care about anything other than being a big, strong guy. And I didn't even know how I was going to monetize it when I got there. I wasn't even thinking that far ahead. Now, had I known how to use the values in food rather than just eat on a basis of quantity, that would have been, I would have probably gotten to my first step of my career, I would say easily 40% faster. Because I look back at the things that I was doing, and there was just no information out there. I mean, there was a point in time, you guys are going to love this. You remember the commercials you used to see on TV, eat wheat, it's good for the body, builds muscle, does this, does that. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, Mom, I want to eat a bunch of wheat bread. So I was eating loaves of wheat bread, thinking that was building muscle. Little did I know it was doing the polar opposite, and I'm doing I'm sitting down in high school, opening up my bag of, it was a big brown bag, I'm whipping out loaves of bread, and people look at me and go, what the fuck are you doing? And I didn't care, because I was going to eat anything that was going to help me build muscle. But that's the kind of shit that I was doing. because I didn't have any knowledge about the value of food and, you know, what values were, you know, if I had been eating more on a carnivore basis from the jump, oh, I mean, I did stumble across that, funny enough, because you guys will like this story too. So my mom somehow ran out of wheat bread. And so I was like, what the fuck am I going to eat here? And I'm in that one track mind. Well, I opened up the cupboard, there's a whole bunch of tuna. And forgive me for cursing. Is that okay? I get passionate and I start letting it. Okay. Yeah. Most people that know me know they're going to get a few curse words when they have me on. But so anyway, there was all this tuna. So I started eating tuna. And, you know, of course, I'm eating max capacity. So I probably, in that first day, I probably ate 12 to 15 cans of tuna, you know?
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I was eating just, you know, loaves and loaves of wheat bread. Well, now I'm doing that version of tuna. Well, it was just a couple of days where I was like, something is different in the gym. I was like, I am getting stronger. And I was like, I want this feeling again tomorrow. And I walk in the gym tomorrow and it's there again. I'm like, okay, what is different? Well, fucking Stevie Wonder could have seen the difference. You know, Jesus Christ, it was, you know, loaves of bread versus cans of tuna. And so that's where I discovered protein. And at that point, now all of my, you know, OCD went to eating protein. So that was where the inception of me eating at least 4 pounds of flesh per day started, which was, oh God, like 1992, 91. So I've been eating 4 pounds of flesh minimum since then. In the beginning, it was mostly chicken. Then once I discovered, you know, I got kind of another step forward when I started going with red meat. And then when I started to understand a little bit more about grass-fed red meat, it took another step forward. I was like, okay, now I got the ticket. So I'm getting bigger, I'm getting stronger, and I'm getting leaner. And all I got to do is keep stuffing my face with this goddamn ground beef. So
do you remember noticing any difference in digestion or how you felt when you were switched from all that bread to more meat?
I was a lot hungrier. I could eat a lot more because the bread wasn't digested, you know, and you know, the obviously in those days, you know, our food was a little cleaner. You know, nowadays the stuff that you get out of a can is borderline, you know, not, I mean, you could say it's healthy, but you could argue the fact that, you know, 30 years ago or 20 years ago versus today, you know, our quality of food has gone down so much. But I did notice when I switched to eating flesh, I could eat so much more and my digestion was going so much faster, you know. And at that point, honestly, brother, I don't know that I was even paying attention, but I remember getting hungrier. I remember having to eat more frequently, which at that time of my life, I thought was a big pain in the ass. I didn't realize the frequency was so helpful either, you know?
Gotcha.
So,
well, I better let Justin ask you a question.
So I can talk too long. Yeah. Yeah. So my main interest is always mindset. And in listening to you, I've been consuming as much material as yours over the last few days. And you seem to have an inverse reaction compared to the average person to pain and discomfort. And whether it's mental discomfort, physical discomfort, you seem to be like, it hurts or not hurt. I think but it's uncomfortable. So I want to push harder. And I'm just curious for you, where does that come from? If you know.
Well, you know, if I really was to think about the actual inception of understanding when it actually started in, I can't really say that I have the moment or that, oh my God moment. What I can say was, you know, lifting weights was just a very kind of a young man's barbaric way of proving manhood. And so I do remember, you know, when I would push myself really hard, I could go so much further than the people around me. And I was getting a whole lot of, I guess you could call it attention, respect, all the above. I mean, it was one of those things where I started to realize that the harder I pushed myself, you know, the more I was achieving, not only for myself mentally and physically, but for those around me in terms of the totem pole of, you know, this guy, you know, because I was a fat little boy, you know. And so going from a fat little boy to being a guy that's, kicking ass in the gym was pretty big change for me. And I really took a lot of pride in that. Now, moving forward, I definitely, as I started to get a little bit smarter in the whole process, I definitely realized that, I started breaking it down in more of in college. My college was definitely where I started to have some breakthroughs. My major in college was theology, minor in philosophy. And so philosophy classes were definitely kind of helping my mind look at things from a different perspective. And that's when I started to realize that, okay, getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your comfort zone and being comfortable getting out of your comfort zone, those are big things. And then got a little further where if I can be comfortable when everybody else is shitting in their pants, now I'm really making progress. And so, you kind of start to have these little revelations, and you start to see how it's unfolding and how it's helping. And then it's like you stumble across a little rabbit hole, and you poke your head in there like, whoa, what's down here? And next thing you know, you're 10 feet deep down there, and the hole just keeps opening up and getting bigger and better. And that whole mental element was something that I discovered pretty early on. And that's what started separating me from the people around me. And that's what made, that's kind of the whole thing of, when you're getting out of your comfort zone easily and you become comfortable and everybody else is uncomfortable, the world changes for you pretty quickly. Excuse me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry to be moving around. I got to get my phone has just told me that it needs a little charge. So 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Got to get it plugged in. If I turn it sideways, is that going to mess us up? Because I've got the cord sticking out the bottom. Okay.
Nope, it won't.
There we go. Perfect.
There you
Beautiful.
go.
Yes.
So
to answer your question, brother, there we go. So to answer your question, the mental side quickly became, I guess you'd say that became more of the focus of my attention, because I realized that the physical side is where really all the gains are. Because if you can take yourself mentally to a place you've never gone before, your body has no choice but to follow. And the types of forward progress you're going to make physically are just unbelievable. And I like in my first book, I talked about learning more about myself in a squat rack than any other place on the planet, because you get I'll put on a certain weight, and it was never, okay, I'm gonna do 10. It's how many reps can I do at this weight? Well, I get to that point where that little voice in my head is saying, done, quit. And I would just think, can I get one more? Next thing you know, fuck man, I've been saying, can I get one more like 11 or 12 times? And you're so far beyond where you thought you could get, because you broke it down into one little piece. Everything was so hot, so terrible, the pressure so much. But can I take one more breath? Can I take one more step? Can I get one more up? And if I can, okay, reboot and try it again. The worst that's going to happen is I'm going to fall down. This weight's going to make a big mess on the floor. That's the worst that's going to happen. I'll be here. I'm not going to die. Although that voice was telling me I was going to die. So yeah, and that's a big thing with my coaching as well, is that I really am big on helping people learn to step out of their comfort zone. Because if you break it down, if you can step out of your comfort zone very easily, life is going to change for you in a dramatic way, because most people live their life in their comfort zone, which means they are never actually, their character, their spirit, their physical prowess is never growing.
Yeah, that comfort zone is usually the same place of living your life in quiet desperation. So
yeah. You'd say you get comfortable. Next thing you know, you're almost just surviving. You're not thriving anymore.
So JC, do you have another question for John?
Not specifically, no. Well, yeah, I do. What is your feeling on I call steak steroids, because it just gives everyone a huge advantage in terms of building muscle. But how do you feel about gear or PEDs or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, that's a very, very big, deep topic. So, well, number one, in the current state of where we are today, and I tell people this all the time, a person that wants to go down that path is absolutely silly, stupid, every other crazy word you can think of, not to do this through a doctor, because doctors are willing and able to do it now. So number one, that's the first thing I got to get off my chest right there. The second thing is for all of the people, primarily kids, that are just doing this shit because, somebody in the gym said it worked, or God knows what, and call it bro science, which is probably the most dangerous science on the planet.
Right.
Just think twice, because, it's unfortunate there have been people that have come along in higher status of weightlifting or competing or whatever you want to call it, and they tell their story, but they tell their story without it's a little reckless in the explanation. And it's different if you say, okay, this is what I did, but going back, I probably wouldn't have done it that way again. That would be the part that a lot of these interviews and videos we're not having. And so it set this forest fire full of young people that started to use, and they had no idea what they're doing. Their diet was no good. A lot of times you hear of these kids that wouldn't even train unless they were using. It's like, oh shit, this is insane. And so, the thing about it in terms of pro level athletics, I mean, I've been a pro in two different sports. You call the third sports entertainment, but I have friends in, all different, NFL, MMA, boxing, Major League Baseball. The public wants to see these astounding physical, accomplishments or acts of greatness. And there's a breed of person who's willing to take the risks with, obviously using PEDs and doing the crazy things and training it takes to operate at that level. And so it's kind of funny how the public will demonize the use of a PED, but they want to see these things. And so it's a little bit of it's a screwy thing. I mean, there was a Time magazine way back when did an article with Olympic athletes, and basically took like, I don't know, 100 of them or whatever it was, big number. And they said, you take the green pill, you'll get a bronze medal at the next games. You take the other pill and you're going to take 10 years off your life. You're going to win a gold medal. And like the high 90%, they chose the gold medal and losing 10 years of their life. And there's some people that have that in them and some people that don't. And so for the people that have that in them and they want to maximize their potential with using PEDs and taking risks and training, all this thing, that's kind of their choice. But they obviously have to do it responsibly if they want to live long enough to achieve what they want to be doing. But more importantly, I think it's kind of crazy for, the public. They want to see this stuff, but then they demonize the things that it takes to get there. It's almost like, a stockbroker that takes Adderall to be better at his job. You don't see, you're not seeing Congress hold a goddamn hearing over this stuff, but, to a certain extent, it's kind of the same thing. He's willing to take the risks, not sleep, and take an amphetamine to do better at his job. So, that this topic you could just go on and on about, but I think the number one thing that has to be, there has to be an accountability to the user has to be there. If the person's going to do it, he has to be accountable for the fact that he's got to take care of himself. He's got to make sure that everything's working properly. There's a lot of, it's like there's different rules to every game you play. And some games are very dangerous. So you got to play by the rules if you're going to stay, healthy. Other games you play, the rule, it's not so dangerous. So you could be a little looser on the rules. If you're playing a game that requires you to, use PEDs and train in a way that's highly dangerous, well, you want to do all the things that are going to try to offset the possible negative of this game. For a soccer mom who's doing her cardio 3 times a week, she can slack off on her diet and her hydration. There's not much of a risk there.
Yeah.
But so I guess when it comes down to it, that's the thing that we find is that, you're finding, different athletes that, they end up having problems later in life, and they go back to the sanctioning body of their sport, and they blame the sanctioning body. Well, nobody fucking forced you to sign the dotted line. Obviously with that risk came a big paycheck too. It's unfortunately you're bankrupt now, because most people who make a lot of money that have never been trained to manage a lot of money go bankrupt very quickly. But I guess there's just so many things that get tied back into this issue. And then unfortunately, you'll find that when there needs to be a reason to blame, it's usually going to be some sort of a drug, whether it's a PED or recreational drug. When in actuality, the blame, I believe, should go to the person who made the choices, because the person who made the choices is the one who allowed, whatever it is, the good or the bad. You're when something's going great, accountability is everybody wants to be accountable for when things are going great, but you have to be accountable for both sides of that goddamn fence,
For sure.
So kind of a interesting answer going a lot of different directions, but hell, we could do a whole show on that topic.
We probably should. I got a quick question about when it comes to feeding, how does your workout and when you sleep affect when you eat, or how much when you place your meals?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that people underestimate is sleep. I tell the people I coach, if you had a shitty night's sleep, don't even go to the gym, because nutrition and your rest and recovery are the two things that will actually make your training effective. It's like, okay, we're going to go on a road trip. Let's all jump in the goddamn RV or whatever we're driving. Well, if somebody forgot to put gas in the tank, we're not fucking going anywhere. So why the hell did we get in the car with no gas in there? And that's something that people have to realize, is that your rest, number one, and your nutrition, number two, they directly affect the effectiveness of your training. And then if you're not rested, that directly affects your appetite. So then it kind of becomes this negative vortex. I mean, some people actually, they would say it goes the other way. So when I'm not rested, I tend to eat more. Well, it's usually, if you break that down, it's because you're usually eating comfort foods because they feel like shit because they're so tired. You don't, generally speaking, when you're extra tired, it's easier to make mistakes on your eating plan at that point. So that's a great question, because I think the general public really misses the idea that there's a pecking order of these three. Going to the gym is usually people hold themselves most accountable to the gym, which I understand, because that's a lot of times what people have the hardest time to do. But really, if they think about it, the eating is actually much harder, because it's not just an hour or 2 hours a day. It's all fucking day long. But I don't think that people hold themselves accountable enough to what a good diet should be. And that's why they focus on the training like that's the hardest. The training is, if you're eating and sleeping, training is actually, forgive me, of course, I love training. So I say this, it's fun. Even for people that don't really particularly enjoy training, if their rest and their diet is on point, it's a much more pleasurable experience. It's much higher on their totem pole of potentially liking the experience. But again, you've got to there's an order that things have to go, that things have to go in to have the optimum effectiveness, So
yeah, I like to say, tell people, because once people start feeling better, a lot of people come to carnivore because they got a serious health issue, and they find out that getting rid of all the other food, they feel a lot better, right? And so, but you know how it is when people in the very beginning, they're enthusiastic, they feel better, and then they want to try everything. And so then they haven't really developed the habit of eating right. And then all of a sudden they're starting exercising, and then they're fasting, and then they're doing this and this and this all at one time. And then you lose track of what the signals are that you're getting from just changing your diet or whatever.
Yeah.
So I always like to say, start with the diet and get that habit going, and then bring in the exercise. And I should probably make, because I struggle with getting enough sleep myself, so it's been a lifetime struggle. So I guess I should probably put that right at the top with eating. You got to get the eating and the sleeping right.
Yeah, no, and it's so true because it's like, it comes down to kind of, like you're saying about the eating being first. I mean, I when I'm coaching somebody, especially if they've had struggles with putting it all together, I'll say, look, you don't even get to train until you've got 3 days of this rhythm with the diet in place. Because then when they do go train, after 3 days of having that rhythm in place, they're going to have an experience that they want to do again. Versus a lot of times these people, sometimes certain clients, I won't even send them their training until I've got their diet in place, because they'll run off and do the training without telling me. Well, the training that I provide for people is usually, it's almost always based upon the nutrition plan and their ability to heal. So somebody with their shitty diet gets all excited, runs off and trains before they went food shopping, gets so fucking crippled up from not being able to recover from their shitty diet. And now we put this terribly negative shadow cloud, or whatever you want to call it, over the top of training, when it's supposed to be a good experience, but it was out of order. So they just got flopped on their back. They're like, what is that? I can't walk. I can't do this. Well, no shit. You didn't listen.
Right.
So
do you want to hit him with a question, Justin?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot that's going through my mind. But firstly, the one thing I love about your approach is I hate to be hungry. Even though I've always been thin, I've never had a weight problem. I've just been one of the lucky or unlucky ones. And when I start training and eating, I'm hungry like all the time. And, I'm trying to get rid of a little bit of the stubborn body fat that I do have. I'm trying to get into that below 10% range. And after listening, because everyone else I've talked to has been like, oh, you got to do like a 3-day fast, or you got to do this, or you've got to like really cut down on things. You got to cut your calories, all that stuff. Now I'm listening to you and I'm like, basically to just up the protein and get that flame just going as strong and as big as I can. And I think that might actually give it, and I want that more. That sounds like an easier way to do it for me, because I have no problem sticking to carnivore. It's just, I'm stuck in this hearing about the intermittent fasting and getting into fasting and doing 1 meal a day and things like that. So my mind has kind of been going against, I think, what my body's been telling me. So I really appreciate listening to you. And I feel like my body is telling me, go eat, basically.
And well, the thing about it is that somehow in this whole, in people's lack of understanding to lose body fat, they, hunger has been like demonized. Like when I say to people, I'll eat an egg to chase away hunger, it's because if I'm hungry, it's not a good thing. A lot of times people, they want to mask hunger. No, hungry, when your body, that's a signal. Your body's saying, hey, dummy, I need some fuel. And if you don't give it the fuel, it says, okay, well, I'm just going to back off on the throttle. Next time you feed me, I'm going to put half of it on my ass, and I'm going to burn the other half really fucking slow so you don't have much energy. So next time I give you the signal I'm hungry, feed me, you dumb son of a bitch. So when you think about hunger, is you're trying to chase hunger away because it's something that's bad. It's like, when you're hungry, it sends the wrong signal to the body. And so another thing too is that when people try to mask hunger, their digestion dramatically slows down. So they train their metabolism to go really slow. And I get this all the time. People use the calorie deficit and they're strict with it. They completely stifle their metabolism. Then when they try to eat more, they can't, because their metabolism is trained to go at about 50, 60% of what it should be. So when you start eating more often, and the best way to do it is frequently, small bits, because that conveyor belt will never, that conveyor belt, your digestion that's carrying the fuel to the fire, will never get jammed by being overloaded. And then you end up, I get lots of people that say, I just can't eat enough to gain. Well, it's because you've trained your metabolism to move slow. You're never going to be able to eat enough to gain. So when I start kind of revamping their diets, very digestible foods, frequent feedings, their hunger shoots through the roof. And they're like, oh my God, I'm hungry. But they're saying it like it's a bad thing. No, this is a good thing. You want to be hungry, And so then we start feeding that hunger. Now we want to make sure we're chasing hunger away. So I'm not saying chase hunger away like, okay, we need to drink a big glass of water to try to cover it up. Right. I'm saying when your body's hungry, this is the green light. This is everything we work for. Feed it. And it's going to, basically the more hungry, more often you get, the better results you're going to have with, when I say this, quality of life. You have more energy. You're going to sleep better. You're going to be more focused. Everything comes from your metabolism moving fast. Now, once your metabolism is moving fast, now reaching your goals becomes a piece of cake, because then, okay, we want to build some muscle. Let's use some weight lift and stimulate the muscle growth. You're not going to carry much body fat if your metabolism is moving fast to begin with. That's what people don't get. The diet is hands down the best way to remove body fat. And if your metabolism is moving fast, if you still got some fat on you, just hold tight, because it's going away. But the body's only going to get rid of body fat so quickly, and the difference is between someone starving themselves in a calorie deficit, they're losing a combination of fat and muscle. And when you're feeding your metabolism, if anything, you're growing muscle in the process, because any stimulation, hell, walking up 3 flights of steps will prompt your body to build some more muscle fiber. It's the idea of, does it have the ability to build the muscle fiber? Does it have the resources to build the muscle fiber? Or are you in a calorie deficit and it's walking up those steps, it's got to burn some more of its own muscle fiber to fulfill the task. So that whole idea that you're talking about, brother, of eating more, I would say, myself, the whole fasting and only eating a few times a day, it just doesn't make sense to me. Hold on 1 second here. I think one of my earpods, sorry, I'm getting all sorts of messages of my equipment's running out of juice here. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
But the idea behind, only eating once or twice a day, I just don't agree with that. A lot of people do it. They have great success. And I think to do with it's a very simple guideline for them. If you're only eating in a small period of time, a small window for the day, it's hard to get enough food in you to be in a large enough surplus to get fat, right? So, but again, I just have never been, I'm always the guy, okay, there's a problem to solve. Let's solve it from the roots up. Let's not just keep cutting the problem off every time it sprouts above ground. And I think if you're using fasting for methodologies other than losing weight, I'm totally in favor of it,
Yeah.
Fasting, people use it to detox and all sorts of shit,
A lot of people, they seem to think because your growth hormone goes up while you're fasting or you're going through autophagy that it's, somehow going to help you build muscle. And you get the same sort of increases in hormone levels just exercising. So you don't have to fast to get it. And we talk a lot about how muscle itself it lends itself to longevity. I mean, some of the most predictive tests out there are like grip strength and how well you can get out of a chair. And of course, we know as long as you're agile and your legs are strong, you're going to live longer than somebody who's fragile. And so when you put muscle on, you have the higher metabolism, the muscle's protective if you do take a spill when you get older, right?
Yeah.
So and then the more muscle you have, the more calories you're going to burn, right? Or the more energy you're going to consume, right? So it all seems to lend itself to living longer and being healthier.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it seems like, part of the problem that I see is that our food has changed so much in the last, 50 to 100 years. Food, the people that the companies and the people that make our food have zero interest in health of the human race. It's purely the dollar. Right. And so when you're doing something, it's, you know, it's kind of like with medicine. You know, if the hospital's bottom line is to become as profitable as possible, something's going to suffer. Probably the employees, and unfortunately, probably the biggest part is going to be the patients. But if they say, you know, okay, well, we need to make a profit margin that allow us to be safe and stay in business, let's do the best job we can. It's a very, very different position that you're taking with your job. And, you know, right now, unfortunately, food is just, how do we get X amount of money out of this as fast as we can? And yes, doing it this way creates a really subpar product, but it's just the way it is. And so I think our food being so different now is a large part of what throws us in so many loops, because, you know, Jesus Christ, now it's like most of food is processed. Processing food directly removes value, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, if you went back to eating whole foods, that's something I'm a big promoter of, is you're eating whole foods. If you got shit sitting in the cabinet and it can stay there for 6 months, it's probably, unless it's nuts, probably not a good idea that you're eating.
Yeah.
You know? So
great. All right. Well, I don't know how much time you have, especially since your devices are running out of juice there. So anytime you
forgive me. No, I've been moving around here. I'm good. So if you keep in mind, if you got some more questions, fire away. If not, I'm good either way, man. I really love talking and making sure that people understand what's going on from as many different angles as possible. So I'm, like I said, if you have a few more questions, fire away. My apologies if my devices were going bad on you.
Yeah, no worries. How many books have you written now? I have the deep water one. So what else do you have?
I have the second one, Fuel Cycle of Greatness, which is basically it's you know, kind of taking deep water and going. Obviously, that stuff is still there, but then it kind of goes into more of my path in terms of my mental positions. I got into some mental stuff with deep water, but I guess the Fuel the Cycle of Greatness would be a more complete version. And I put some different type of workouts and diets in there for different people, just trying to kind of make a more helpful manual, I guess you would say, you know? So
Well, I have a question.
Go.
Yes.
So, John, you're telling me I get to eat more frequently, and I don't have to do cardio. So where do I sign up?
Well, if you're looking to have me coach you, the simplest way would be to go into my Instagram. My Instagram is @the_Jon Andersen. My name is spelled a little wonky front and back, so forgive me. It's Jon is Jon, and Andersen is Andersen instead of On. I'm Nordic, so ultimately you go into my direct messages, say that you're interested in, you know, changing the quality of your life. The first thing I'm gonna do is find out, are you wanting to change the quality of your life, or are you getting ready for a cruise? Tell me you're getting ready for a cruise, I'll tell you to get the hell out of my DMs. But realistically, when it comes down to it, most, you know, they're obviously, I coach athletes, but then people that just want a better quality of life, these people have such a major, I mean, their whole life kind of takes an about face in a positive way. Because really what it comes down to for those people, the athletes have already created the positive habits that have helped them to get where they are athletically. The average Joe, not that that's a bad thing, they've got a whole series of bad habits that are taking them down the wrong path. So really what it comes down to is I really help people recreate their habits and then fill them with the knowledge of what to put within those habits to get what they want out of their life, whether it be losing body fat, building muscle, both. Now, when I say out of their life, I don't really sell that I'm, you know, a mentor or a life coach, but really that's what kind of happens, because when I start getting someone's mind in the right spot, they're thinking ahead, they're planning ahead, they're forecasting, you know, where the problems may be in their schedule for tomorrow. It's really, I'm doing that to help them with their diet, but it starts to spread through the rest of their life. And can't tell you how many wives I've had, you know, go into my DM or send me an email, say, I was so against my husband doing this, but this was the best choice. he's got more energy, their sex life is better. Her honeydew list is completely done all the time because he's got more energy. So it's really, when it comes down to it, and that's one of the things that I love about, like carnivore, in the fact that it's a very simple pathway of eating that people can grab a hold of that will help them have a better quality of life. And for the layman, they don't have all the information that they need to, like what I'm going to teach them, but something like carnivore is so simple, they can grab a hold of it. I have people come to me from carnivore where they've made tons of progress. I mean, just totally changed their life, but they come to me because they need that final push. They need to get, maybe they're stuck at a certain number. So at that point, really what I'm doing is I'm changing some stuff with their diet, of course, but it has more to do with a lot of the patterns and the rhythms that are off. And once we recreate those habits, the majority of what they need, they already had. They just weren't applying it properly. So
that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you so bad, is because there's so many people in the carnivore community that were sick for a long time. They get the diet improved and then they're like, wow, I can do anything now. What am I going to do? How do I get to the next level? And I thought, now you really got on my radar when you did those interviews with Zach Bitter and Sean Baker. Yeah. So ever since then, you've been in my head. And for me too, I had arthritis so bad for like 8 years, I had to quit the gym. And then I recently got back into it. And it's like, I got your deep water book. I was following that right when the lockdown hit, and then there's a few wrinkles there. Now I'll be back at the gym like every day and just enjoying it. And I'm like, I'm thinking, well, how do I get to what's next?
Yeah.
Because things are clicking along, going so good. Now I just want to know, I want to, in fact, Justin and I are working on a plan for all of next year, what we're going to do to up our game. So it was like perfect timing that we got you to come on.
Yeah, well, that's really cool, man. I appreciate you guys having me on, and more importantly, I just love the fact that we're all in the same boat, trying to spread the proper message to people so they can have a better life. Helping people become the best version of themselves might be one of the best jobs on the planet.
Yeah, that really comes through with you too. I mean, I think a lot of people, they see your short little motivational videos, they may not realize that behind that is just, there's a guy who just loves helping people. He loves helping people get to a better place in their life and, help them achieve new things. So that's one of the reasons why I've followed you all this time, because I really came through in those interviews back then. Was a couple.
Yeah, well, that's cool, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, the motivation, if someone just sees that part of me, for sure, it's going to be it's just an incomplete look, but it's, I started doing those videos. I was just really, really blown away with how many people said, look, man, you're like my morning cup of coffee, man. I hear this and I'm in high gear. And, I thought, well, God, if this is, and I hadn't been doing it that long. And so I thought, man, I need to really commit to this and give people. So I put out a daily morning video now. God, it's years. I haven't missed a day. So it's, it's one of those things that, realistically, it's like an author writing many, many books about the same topic, but how he explains the topic resonates with people in different ways. And, if those videos help people have a better day, then it was worth it.
Well, everybody has a certain amount of chaos in their life, but when they get that reminder, like in your videos, like, hey, you got something bigger and better you can do for yourself, and then you keep that little beacon going in the background where it's like, yeah, I got to do all this other crap, but on top of that, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to have a monster workout, and I'm going to feel amazing,
Yeah.
So I think that for me anyways, that's one of the things I get out of your short videos is just, hey, remember, there is something in it for you,
That's great, brother.
Do you guys have any final questions for John? I don't want to keep them too long.
I've got questions. Of course, I've got questions. My first one is that with the frequent eating in the carnivore space, there's a lot of people worried about stimulating mTOR, which I believe is a hormone. Tom, mTOR.
Yeah, so
but-
mTOR stimulates muscle growth. I didn't know
Right.
people were worried about that.
Well, because there was some research about it being an inflammatory process, and then there was some research of it possibly leading to like cancer or something like that, some
Right.
correlation or something like that.
Yeah, and then the flip side of that is, everybody in the low carb community is trying to keep their insulin at a normal level, and insulin stimulates mTOR even more than eating meat. So,
well, my biggest answer is because people say this, people say it, worried about this, worried about that. Okay, well, let's try to figure out where that concern resonates on the totem pole of importance. Okay, we have this one factor that may be a concern, and it may be brought on by frequent eating. So we've got one thing that we're concerned about, frequent eating. Let's go to the other side of the scale of how many positive things are happening from frequent eating. So should we throw away frequent eating because there's 17 good things and one bad thing? Well, I would keep that. That's something I would fight to keep in. And now, if there was 17 bad things and one good thing, obviously it's a different view on the topic. When I say 17, I'm just making a kind of a funny example.
sure.
But there's no such thing as an action that only has good. There's always going to be a good and bad ratio. It's just you want the bad to be just a little bitty bit of bad and a whole lot of good. And some actions you take are going to have equal, and some are going to be primarily bad, and some are going to be primarily good. And you try to take the ones that are primarily good, group them together, figure out what the formula is for the individual, because they're all going to be, everybody's formula is a little bit different. And that's how you kind of figure out your, like what I do when I coach people is I give them rules. It's anywhere between 2 and 5 rules. And these rules are things that they stay focused on, because what it does is it keeps enough good things in and keeps enough of the bad things out. And so then they end up with predominantly good things that they're focused on. And the bad is kind of, the idea the rules are going to keep the bad things on the outside of the equation, not the inside of the equation. But it's impossible to have. I don't know that we know anything that you can do that's only going to be good. There's an argument for every diet, every angle. I mean, it's just the world we live in. You could find something that's works perfectly, but if one person has an adverse effect, everybody's going to hang their hat on.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well,
and then my next one
Go for
was
it.
going to be like about the generation gap. So it seems to be, there's this horrible statistic about during this recent pestilence that we're still going over, wink, wink, the pestilence, that like there was a big percentage of millennials that had gained like 30 pounds or something like that. I think it was like 20% or 30% of millennials, which is like my group. JC might be Gen Z more, but also kind of millennial. But there seems to be this push of getting like my generation being very unhealthy, very inactive, and this push of moving us from the physical world into the digital world.
Yeah.
And my question about, sorry, it just looks like my internet crashed. Could you guys?
We can still hear you.
Yeah, we can still hear you,
Am I
brother.
still here?
Yeah, keep talking.
Yeah.
Nope, that was gone. Oh, we lost him.
He was about halfway through his question. I thought I'm pretty sure I knew where he was going, but
Yeah. Why don't?
Oh, he's back.
He's
He's
back.
back. There he is.
Go, Justin. Finish your.
Sorry about that.
Question.
Yeah.
No worries, brother.
Just this. The generation, if you notice that
I think where he's going with it is that, do you see fewer guys his age with an interest in working out and getting, with bodybuilding and strength training, because they're more focused on, playing video games and staying home?
Yeah. Well, it's. I mean, when it comes down to it, that in the world of strength and bodybuilding and sports, we call it the Snowflake Generation. And because it's like they've spent so much time doing this, playing video games, versus out actually do. I mean, the kids now would rather play basketball this way than actually play this way, which is silly to me. I mean, I don't understand that, but that's the way they were all raised. And so there's a huge difference, because a lot of them won't even engage. they're you know, they've done so little physical activity. They've I think physically don't even give themselves the opportunity to take the first step because they're so intimidated, or I don't know what you want to call it, but they're you know, the kids that come through now are just different than they were you know, 20 years ago. You know, I coached, I did a lot of I do all online coaching now, but basically years ago I used to do in person. It's some of those kids, like the last series of those kids that because I stopped doing it because they just the snowflakes were showing up. And you know, I was putting a whole bunch of kids in D1, and I got kids into the pros. Like there's one of my kids is starting for the Seahawks right now. And I'm not my kid, of course, but the kids I worked with, I only have girls. So, but anyway, but that was the tail end. I mean, after that, you just, these are the kids that I have to tell them, you're done, go home. You're going to hurt yourself. You've worked hard enough. You can't possibly get a kid to work hard enough now. Well, that's a pretty big statement, but very difficult to get a kid to work hard enough. You have to tell them to stop now. So just that alone kind of shows the difference in generation, the difference as the generations have moved forward. So, but yeah, that was that for sure. I mean, if that continues, our human race is going to be quite different from now in say 50 more years. Holy smokes.
Well, some people would argue that it's cyclical because, you know, easy times make for soft people, and soft times make for conflict, and conflict makes for hard people, you know. So
yeah,
maybe it just keeps going around. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But
well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and of course, you're welcome back anytime. So
absolutely, brother. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and we're just all sitting here bullshitting about, you know, interesting topics that people need to hear about and understand. So, you know, I appreciate, you know, the opportunity to come on with you guys, and I'd love to come back at some point. So we'll definitely stay in touch, brother.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I love your content, and I'm gonna look forward to checking out your second book. So, and I appreciate you coming on because I thought it was time to have a slightly different opinion about eating, you know, and eating a little more frequently, because the other side of the conversation is very heavily weighted right now. So that was my my other reason for wanting to get you on here. So
yeah, I've generally speaking, I've never seemed to go with the flow. I go with what I feel is most effective. You know,
I can appreciate that. Well, and you've got the success on your side to back that up. So
thank you, brother. You got it.
So anyways, what I like to always say is for everybody out there, eat some meat, feel better, and maybe send the link to this video on to somebody who's going to appreciate it. And until next time, whatever you do, don't fall down
the carb hole.